So what up, though? It's Deron Dandridge, CEO of Black Leaders Detroit, and we are back again for another episode of Speak for Yourself. We have a very special guest with us. Of course, we have Ken Elkins, our COO, here again representing for Saginaw Awesome.
Sag Awesome.
And Khary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Khary Frazier, Detroit is different, founder, but more so than that, just a person in the neighborhood, in the community, always advocating for legacy Black Detroiters to tell our stories.
That's what's up. So you said in the neighborhood, and I don't know if I would pick up on that if I was watching. I know a little bit about what you mean when you say that, but Detroit is different. Is literally in a neighborhood.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, the neighborhood it's in, your connection to that neighborhood.
Okay, so Detroit is Different is a platform. It's also a nonprofit, but more so, before we even get into that, the neighborhood that it resides in is Hope Village community. Hope Village can also be known for most people by 12th Street, 1, 2, or Linwood, Davidson, Dexter, kind of like that pocket when we think of, I would say, Davidson all the way over to Oakman. This is my footprint. This is where I've grown, my connection. It is something close in heart. My family moved there in 46, and when we moved into the home on Clements that right now is the Detroit is Different incubation hub, where we produce a lot of podcasts, video content, photography, tell a lot of stories. It was a home that my grandfather, World War II veteran, lost a leg in the war, but he actually received his GI Bill. They were the first Black family on the block, and within 3 years, many of the Jewish families moved from the block, and it became an all-Black neighborhood. Later on, my family ended up getting the home next door, and that is the footprint in the space where we do a lot of the Detroit is Different works. From these homes in this community where my family has been connected since the mid-40s to today. So a lot of the changes following the arc of what's happened, pre-rebellion, almost like the original rebellion, on through to today. That is the footprint of where we're at, and it changes the flavor and understanding of how I look at legacy Black Detroit, because my community is the community. Don and Will Davis, when we think of First Independence Bank right around the corner, we think about the other Motown connections that do exist over there. It runs deep. It's a lot of legacies that cross paths in my community, in my neighborhood, that I'm aware of, that we triumph, and then also the things we learn from, those challenges that we can grow from as well.
That's good.
Right. So what inspired you to do this project, with the podcast, with all the work that you're doing? What inspired you to do this?
That's a deep question. So I wish I had like a more like poignant answer, like, wow, you know what I'm saying? I knew that this would be impactful. But in 2014, I was still performing so much hip hop still. Okay. And I took a little time off, thinking through like what I would do next, and leading into my next project, I wanted to have a platform that I could share just some stories and music. And 2014 is 9 years ago, but just in the world of internet, it might as well be dinosaurs were walking around. You know what I'm saying? The internet world. So back then, blogs were a little bit more popular. The way we received information was more read than video. And I was one of the few people that was really getting into podcasting. And at the time, a lot of people were like, what is podcasting? What is podcasting? I found it fulfilling to for bicycle rides and working out or studying, or just like getting a deeper context for discussion. So I love long form content. This is before I even knew it was long-form content. And connected to this, just knowing my audio background and recording, I said, I can do a podcast. Mm-hmm. And if I do a podcast, I want to introduce people to the different people in Detroit that I feel add the culture and the flavor of Detroit. Because it still is a narrative where people feel trapped here. People don't like the city. They have such negative views of the city. In my experience with Detroit, though I honor that, has not been that. My experience with Detroit is there are so many worlds, and I feel it's a very cliquish culture here. Mm-hmm. Meaning you can live in a neighborhood like right next door to like somebody that has been one of the first leading black puppeteers for years, and maybe helped design a puppet on Sesame Street or something, and you don't even know that.
Yeah.
That is so classic Detroit, and it's like a whole industry of people in underworld connected to this. So I wanted to introduce some of that with the food, the fashion, the business people, some of the faith leaders, some of the community people. I mean, you know, when we really think of what exists in Detroit, it is a whole world that I think we take for granted because we're here and we're just kind of associated in our silos of the people we're connected to. So Detroit is Different began as like a platform to say, okay, I can talk a little bit about my music and then show people more so what's flavoring and adding the taste to this. That was in 2014. Now, as I've done this, I found other options. It's grown into more business opportunities. It's connected me to community. It's introduced me to people like Dewan and other people that are doing different things in and around the neighborhood, and really just opening up the lens to say, this is what's happening in the city of Detroit and who's connected to Detroit. So it's been powerful.
Nice.
So I have a question, just out of curiosity. So you get to interview a lot of people. I've seen some
all
people
types
in
of
there.
people. Yep.
So without, like, you know, taking a shot at anybody else or dissing anybody else, who is like your favorite or most interesting person that you've interviewed so far?
Okay, my favorite, and this is more so just along the lines of like what I think is just interesting, like of a person that's just very charismatic, very avant-garde. It's a rapper, The Black Man. I don't know how many people know The Black Man. It's actually two rappers named The Black Man in Detroit. So you have The Black Man that usually performs at a lot of the Alkebulan Village, a lot of the inner city sub-center events and things like that. So that's one black man. Then you got The Black Man that taught Kid Rock how to rap. And he went on tour with Kid Rock like back in the 80s. And I even have a stint from when I interviewed him, I took a snippet from when Too Short, and Ice Cube said, yeah, man, it was this white boy that came up, and we wasn't like, man, this white boy can't rap. And then he came up with this rapper that would call himself The Black Man. That was Black Man.
Wow.
And his life.
I don't know if we should. I want to shout out Black Man, or if I want to be like, Black Man, why'd you do it?
Right. I think it's Black Man. Why'd you do it?
But I can tell you, like, he is one of the most, like, you know, Detroit is full of these people where, like, you know, one day, you know, they'll say like, yeah, you know, yesterday I was on the D-Dot and just trying to get Greyhound money. And then the next day he's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? This, the ambassador from Paris is coming and I'm showing them some places.
Right,
and you'd be like, like, how did, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't even think you had a phone on. How did they get in contact with you to do this? And he's one of those people. So that was interesting. I like my interview with you because, like, we, and I'm not even saying that because you're sitting here.
Yes,
I'm
you are.
saying that.
Yes, you are. And you saying it because he used to be a dancer for you when you was rapping. Jared, show the video. Jared, when you edit the video, show the video of Devon dancing when he was a rapper.
I never knew what it was like to have a hater until started hanging around kids. I never knew what it was like.
I have not seen Juan scoop and scrap moves, so I'm pretty sure.
But there's definitely video of Kid breaking it down, right? On a regular. Like in 2022.
Hey, I just saw the new house party. I mean, he had been choreographed.
Exactly.
You know, but,
he auditioned.
How you telling everybody my secrets,
you know, it's kind of like when a interview is that presence of mind, and that's usually what leads to something that's interesting. When you can tell like a person has a presence of mind, and I'm not necessarily saying when I've interviewed people when they have an agenda and they're sticking to their agenda and more quote unquote media trained, but because I'm interviewing people and not a lot of figures, I usually get that information. And that's why when people say, why don't you interview more celebrities? Because I've had some more celebrity options, and I usually pass on it because I feel like it's not going to be so sincere. You know, when the publicist walks in with the, you can't ask this, you can't ask that, you can't ask this. And I'm like, if it's a natural flow of a conversation and I have that question, I'm going to really want to ask that question. And now I'm going to just only have in my head, oh, I can't.
And then they're going to feel slighted, like, it slips out, and then they're like, we said you're going to answer that question.
Yeah, so sometimes it is the interesting person that I don't think would be that interesting. I interviewed, I'm forgetting this guy's name. He was the costume designer for the Four Tops and the Spinners for, I don't know, maybe like 25 years. But he just had a lot of interesting stories about like their ideas on what they would think of costumes, and just, you know, that exists here in Detroit because obviously the industry was here in Detroit, and how he chose to move after Motown moved to LA and still work on things, and who you design costumes for. And it's like, okay, yeah, I do a couple prom dresses here and there, and then it becomes a set design, and Aretha has me like do a kitchen or something for her. Like, it's like, this is an interesting story. So those are some of those stories that really connect. You know?
No, that's what's up. That's good. That's good, man. So I guess it was a big football game played yesterday.
Very much so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So did y'all watch the football game?
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know neither one of y'all are big football fans, right?
I'm decent, not huge though. I just watch the playoffs for the most part.
Yeah.
I've after Kaepernick, it's just been tough. Like I kind of disconnected more. I switched back to boxing for contact sport, but I've always been more of basketball. But you know, I keep at least a little bit just in barbershop conversation. Like, you know, you keep your ear to the streets a little just for culture. But
That's what's up. Yeah. So I watched it. So I stopped watching football after the whole Kaepernick thing as well. But I always, I guess, put fellowship over, like, you know, my protest, right? So it was a good time to hang out with my father-in-law, my uncle. My dad opted to chill at home. He didn't feel like driving out. But for the sake of fellowship, you know, I'll sit there. And I'll say that I enjoyed the game.
Yeah.
Interesting game. I definitely was excited to see the first time we had two black quarterbacks like playing against each other, and they both like played their butts off. It looked like it was going to come down to whoever had the rock at the end, right, was going to end up walking away with the W. So shout out to both of them and their families and the folks that, you know, reared them up and put them in position. It's hard for me to watch, even as I hear you say like boxing, right? Like after knowing kind of some of the outcomes and what happens, you know, to them physically after, you know, their career ends. I follow this dude on social media that talks about life after football and how they don't have, you know, healthcare benefits. And he, you know, applies every year only to be denied. And they're jacked up. And he talks about kind of going to hearings and different things, and, you know, football players being rolled in by their family members, sons, daughters, wives, what have you. So it's hard for me to, like, even if it wasn't for Kaepernick, I don't know if I could go back to really being a fan in that way and watching, knowing that that's the outcome. And like my son's an artist and a writer, and I was an athlete or fancied myself an athlete, you know, growing up. And like I was always excited, like, okay, I have a son, he's going to be into this, and he didn't like sports at all. At first I was kind of like, what's up? Well, yeah, you know what I mean? Kind of like, you know, saddened by it. But once I started to understand some of the ramifications, because football probably would have been his sport if he did like sports. I'm glad that he didn't like sports. You know what I mean? It's like you have a lot longer career, a much healthier career physically, being an artist or a writer. So, yeah, it was interesting. But what are some of your thoughts just around any of the highlights of it, right? I thought, you know, a bunch of people was talking about Rihanna and, you know, quick to compare her to whoever you want to compare her to, but I thought what they was doing was kind of dope, like levitating on those platforms and kind of coming out of the sky. I was like, dang, like that's kind of creative. And you know, as a person that dabbled in or dealt in or, you know, was full-time in kind of construction, I always look at that stuff and wonder, how did they pull it off? You know what I mean? So that stuff was kind of fascinating to me. But what were any takeaways that y'all had from the game?
I thought, well, it's interesting you mentioned Rihanna. Usually the halftime show, the last halftime show I watched was when Prince did it. So it's like, you know, I feel like it's more of a spectacle with Prince because it was raining. Then he did Purple Rain. I was like, okay, this is like interesting. I really was thinking more so from the media lens. I have a marketing firm, Creative Differences, hence the storytelling. Though it's like a lot of grassroots, like connecting stories. But I'm always thinking about how people interpret things. So the Kaepernick protest really put a dent in the NFL. I don't. We'll never really know the true figures, and I believe they would never reveal those true figures. But we can definitely tell with like in racism and the end zone, and even the way that all of the announcers were speaking to this being the first time quarterbacks are in the Super Bowl. You can tell, and even the position of Jay-Z being the music director for Super Bowl halftime entertainment now. Now he's transitioned that Rock Nation brunch to be a part of Super Bowl weekend, which is an entity that he has. I bring all of this up to say this also, as a businessman and a person that does things in the community, obviously aligning with always Black empowerment, I can look at these moments and analyze what I'm thinking the moves that's being made is here. And when I think of the move being made and leadership and how we look at the arc of leadership, I believe that similar to Kanye West, and more publicly speaking on it, Jay-Z comes from the arc of him seeing Black leadership and empowerment being a Black man in a position of wealth and attributes and the material gains of what he idolizes from white leadership, as opposed to even his wife, Beyonce, which I believe makes a lot more moves along collective upliftment of our people and putting different Black people in positions, because this is all I'm bringing up when I think of some of the things unpacking how we look at this Super Bowl, and now it focusing more on, I guess, people of color entertainment since he's been in this position. Right. So it's like, how much influence is Jay-Z really having? Like, could Jay-Z turn around and say, all right, I want Public Enemy to do a halftime show? Could he turn around and say, even though these people have canceled Kanye West, I haven't canceled Kanye West, and I even found it interesting that in the Super Bowl thing, I did see that Rihanna performed Flashing Lights, which I thought was a revolutionary move of herself, and wearing the Yeezys. So I'm thinking in reference to like how much of this is Jay-Z being used for his social capital, and how much of it is him actually being in that position of influence. So I'm thinking all of this when I look at positioning and branding and messaging, communicating. I was really unpacking that and thinking to myself, this relationship between now hip hop and the NFL existing, and is it a true relationship, or is this just a relationship that the NFL is saying, like, we just want to basically appeal to this demographic that we feel we lost, because a lot of brothers like us stopped watching the NFL as adamantly as we did with the Kaepernick situation.
It's interesting because I was thinking about it the other day or yesterday, because I think the last 3 Super Bowls halftime shows has been people of color. Right, so last year was Dr. Dre and Snoop. The year before that was
Shakira and Jennifer Lopez, I think.
Okay, so so people of color, right? So it's interesting, right? To where, so I think 24 is definitely gonna be somebody white. So it's gonna be time for somebody white.
Think so?
Especially because they're gonna probably petition for 25 in Louisiana. Who do you think they're gonna try to get to be halftime entertainment then? My guess would be Lil Wayne, right? So if Lil Wayne is gonna be 25, it definitely got to be somebody white in 24, so it ain't gonna have, But so I wonder, like you said, is that the people of color is from Jay-Z? But I want to address something that you said interesting earlier too. Before that comment was, because I always wrestle with the concussion piece and athletes or football players going through what they go through, and how you were saying, I wouldn't want my son to do it. And the interesting part about that, like, a lot of us grew up, I know your situation, I'm not sure of your situation, but me personally, I would sacrifice myself for my family. Me personally. Yeah. I grew up very poor. So if I was injured, if I had to go in a wheelchair, but my mama was straight, my kids were straight, if my siblings were straight and doing very well, and I was in a wheelchair due to that, I'd be all right with that. Because I sacrifice a lot more, well, not a lot more, but I make a lot of sacrifices not, and they ain't straight. You know what I mean? My family, the majority of my family is still poor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if I could have done something to change that, and that was what I gave, was my health, I would be honestly willing to do that. I would honestly, in all honesty, be willing to give my life for my entire family to be good.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going to stick a pin right there. We're going to go to a real quick break and then come back, and I think me and Khary both probably have some thoughts following behind that. Detroit Sip is the community's coffee shop. It is located on 6 Mile between Livernois and Wyoming. Inside, you'll find free Wi-Fi, sweet and savory treats, and drinks to celebrate the city of Detroit. Let us be your home away from home. Let us be your home away from home or workspace. Printing options are also now available. We are open every week, Thursday through Sunday. Follow Detroit Sip on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We are much more than a cup of coffee and have the best customer service around. Come chill with us. Inspiration is just a sip away. So welcome back. Definitely Ken just dropped some thoughts on the cost-benefit analysis that lots of brothers make when it comes to putting their health on the line to play a sport that some of them love, but also they see it as a means of getting their family out of a rough situation similar to the one that you described. So I know I have some thoughts on that, but I think you do too. So what were your thoughts?
So it's interesting that you speak to, as you open and led with, like, who's at the halftime and that sacrifice, because definitely the physical sacrifice, I think in certain ways I would be more aligned with you, because that's a personal sacrifice for a collective whole. But we also, like, back to that business side and how I see this marketing. You spoke to last year's Super Bowl. Last year's Super Bowl took place in Los Angeles for this new stadium for the Rams and the Chargers, which happened to be where my sister and my nephew live, in Inglewood. This is the community connected to where Nipsey was murdered. And it displaced, the placement of that stadium displaced a lot of black residents. I believe that halftime Super Bowl show was almost a token of like, appreciate this, because Dr. Dre and Snoop are going to perform for you guys at halftime, for you to forget the displacement of a lot of those citizens. And
right.
Jay-Z
Forget your house, take Jay-Z and Snoop.
Yes, and Jay-Z was involved in this with the Barclays Center deal as well. So, like, that's why when I think about, like, what sacrifices we're making for the empowerment of your people, we also have to think about at what cost beyond just the physical, because I believe that some of these sacrifices that Jay-Z is making now, involving hip-hop and his social capital and connection to hip-hop and leveraging that with the NFL, is having a larger impact on the empowerment of the mission of, like, a Black Leaders Detroit. Some of the work that Detroit is Different definitely wants to support and amplify of Black empowerment over and beyond, because even with what you speak to, if I were to, like, technically that'd be like if I have a life insurance policy and I'm a gang member, and it's like, okay, chances are I may die soon, so hey, this money can go to my family. What's the consciousness of my family? Where are they at? As we know that if we're interpreting money as having more value than the true resource that it is, it may actually put my family in a more detrimental space than an empowering space. So these are things that I kind of wrestle with as I think that through. And I believe most brothers will make the sacrifice and hope and pray that the family makes the best decisions. But I also think that as we look to business leaders and forms of leadership and what empowerment is and who to hold accountable and how things move, we also need to look up that chain when something like that halftime show is happening and what that halftime show represents and why they're there and why we are on the stage. Because I would say I think that there will probably be more Black performers, because that stake and that share of Black eyes, support, money, attention, and energy, and also even going down to, like what Dewan just said, even the parents of a lot of these Black players, because the NFL is Black. You know, if Black players ain't in the NFL, it's rugby. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, like, that energy matters too.
Yeah. I guess my thoughts go to like how much we get paid to entertain, right? It's like, come and entertain me. When I see them like shoot the camera up to the boxes where the owners are, and I see them celebrating a play, I can't help but in my mind imagine them thinking, that's my nigga down there. You see that big, strong nigga down there? Like, I can't help but think that when I see that, right? And it's rough because we still find ourselves in this day and age with a lot of people having to make that decision. Like, you have a brilliant mind. A lot of those brothers out there have brilliant minds.
Definitely.
Like, I think about, as you bring up boxing, right? Floyd, like Mayweather, right?
Yeah.
It's like, he's a phenomenal boxer.
Oh.
Come from a family that is like generationally like uneducated from a traditional stance, sense, right?
Yes.
But very educated in different ways. I don't appreciate like how flashy he is and how much he likes to talk about what he spent money on. But when I sit there and listen to him as a mature man break down interactions with his daughter's boyfriend,
Yeah.
right? And the mature stance that he take on that. When I think about him going back and how he talks about his uncle and even his relationship with his dad now, that relationship has been crazy, and we saw a lot of it, the rough spots lived out publicly. That's a brilliant mind, like at work, right? Like being able to navigate some of those spaces the way that he has in a really sophisticated way, like I appreciate that. But I think that we're not offered that space up in there in the suite, right? We're offered the space down there, like on the field again. And that is rough for me because to just, reconcile that. And I fully understand why like people would be tired of seeing their family in those situations and want to put them in a better situation so that, the next generation won't have to make that decision, right? The next generation of intellectuals will be able to maybe be intellectuals, So at the end of the day, I get it. It's complicated. It makes sense.
But an athlete is an athlete. Like, I get what you're saying, but I could be an intellectual and be an athlete. I know a very, very smart man, a young man who's extremely, extremely intelligent. Yeah. Got recruited by every Ivy League school. He loves football. He wants to play football, right? So, and that's where he wants to. He doesn't have to be on the field.
Yeah.
His parents got money, don't have to be on the field. He's not in that position where he's struggling. This is what he has to do. This is what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's an athlete and that's what he wants to do. So to hear you say, when you say, well, that's my nigga on the field, what if the opportunity, how would you feel if the opportunity wasn't there for them to be on the field?
I think this is where really the mission of this organization comes into play, and so many more like this. I mean, because the mission of Black Leaders Detroit, uplifting and allowing for capital, because that really becomes the bigger discussion. So as much as I love basketball, I was fractured from watching a lot of basketball this season because of everything that happened with Kyrie Irving. But running concurrent during the time of this Kyrie Irving story and the way that I believe his character was defamed, you also had the owner of the Phoenix Suns with open racist comments, with open sexual assault and sexual sexual harassment charges and things like that running concurrent at the same time. And this man sold the team for $4 billion. So it heightened, very similar to what happened with the Clippers.
Their punishment is a reward.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And this becomes the tough thing when I think of my world and why I always unpack media in this realm, to the point where I saw a commercial for, I guess it's going to be a Phil Knight movie on Nike. And I'm going to be pushing everybody to boycott this movie because Phil Knight's comments about Kyrie Irving, as far as I'm concerned, as a black community, as much as I even still own Nikes, I will never buy any new ones. I'm still debating like, damn, do I really want to throw away my other Nikes? Because it's about those acts of empowerment in our community. So it doesn't feel as much as like that nigga on the field when it's like, okay, I can also, it's an arm's length transaction. We're on the same level. You're not about to put me in positions because being in this, I'm safe here, I'm safe there, I'm safe there. Even quarterback for so long. And I would still even argue to today because it's like the black quarterback, wow, he's so athletic. The white quarterback, he's such a brilliant thinker. Tom Brady, can read a defense and he's such a leader. The black quarterback is like, he's so athletic. He's so fast. That's what he brings, where it's like, nah, these people are just as brilliant. You're not even giving us the opportunities. And the only way we're going to get that opportunity is if we empower ourselves. So it's really a two-sided discussion, internal for us to be like, okay, we need to see everything that's happening, the holistic picture. And then from the outside in, we're about the empowerment on all levels. So we're either going to get everything or some of us are going to walk away from this and build our own thing.
Yeah, and it's great points. Very well put. I'm trying to like remember the question, right? So I can try to answer the question. So the question, I think you was, what if they wasn't given an opportunity?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I guess the way that I view it is, and what really troubles me is the power dynamics. Right? It's like it's the power dynamics.
Right.
It's like the majority of the people are players. But if you think about all the owners, especially if you're talking NFL, end up being white.
Well, you have one, you have an Indian owner, I believe, that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's the one.
Thanks for the correction. And oftentimes we get excited when we hear black ownership, like when Magic, was part owner of the Dodgers.
Yes.
Right? It's like, or Jay-Z with the Nets. It's like when you look behind the curtain, you see that they are like own such a small percentage of those companies that you do have in the NBA at least, like Michael Jordan, right, who owns the Bobcats. But even that, to me, is like a trick bag, right? Yes. It's like that's a market that's been tested and proven that there's really no market there for a professional basketball team, right? It's like the brother, was it Ben, that owned BET, was the original owner there, right?
Bob Johnson.
Mm-hmm. But I think that space is set up for, their competition is Duke,
Carolina,
North Carolina, NC State, you know what I mean? It's like, so there's a market for that type of basketball, not, professional basketball. So it's like you're set up to lose anyway. You know what I mean? So I think the power dynamics is what I really wrestle with.
Right.
So you're welcome to entertain. You're welcome to be the talent, right? But you're just not here. We're not invited to the table to really be the boss.
I definitely get that. I definitely understand that. But with the way you said it, as if it was negative to be the football player. Like, that's how I understood the statement you were saying. Like, the football players, that's a negative thing to be.
I'm not knocking anybody for doing that. And I'm not even questioning their motives or saying they owe me an explanation, right? Like, they don't. Nobody that's choosing that pathway or that profession owes me a definition of who am I to judge what somebody else does with their life. I'm just saying that when I see it, here's how I'm processing it, and here's what I struggle with, right? Even in opting to be a fan of it, you know what I mean? Those are some of the things I see. I still hear my Uncle Carl in my head. So don't let me catch you dancing for them.
So
you know what I mean?
I have this question then. And what dynamic? Just because this becomes a bigger question just for the black community in general.
Oh yeah,
because technically, we're all in certain ways dancing for them, whether in dynamics of many institutions, education, definitely the business world, because I do think that Jay-Z was tokenized with the Brooklyn deal as well. And it happens. And even in those spaces and places, it's opportunities I've been given where it's like, okay, I know I'm the black person, and then they're like, oh, come on, let's all take a picture. And it's like, all right, 1 second, time out. Like, do I take this picture? I want to get this check. They're incepting this to make it seem like this check, you know what I'm saying? Do I just not smile and be angry black man? Like, how do I go about this approach? Because that tokenism, that, you know, tap dance, that put on the, you know, show teeth, smile, like this has been present, especially from a black man dynamic, I would say since before America was even America.
Yeah, but see, I don't know if it's always tokenism. I think sometimes there's Jay-Z's, maybe him, maybe not him, but a lot of people that step into that space and they have a plan for what their long game is.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know people around Detroit that they get in spaces, and I had a brother within the organization here a couple years back. He was like, well, if you don't see me here in 6 months, you know I wasn't able to make the right moves, right? So like sometimes you have to go in through whatever door is available in order to be able to make change or attempt to make change, right? So as somebody that's worked in a white-led organization that has some controversial things going on, I was called token and an Oreo, you know what I mean? And
I didn't mean to stream. I'm sorry.
Whatever. You definitely would have got strong on. But I realized that the people that were there that called me that, they didn't know me. So based on like the optics and what it looked like, if I was sitting out there back then, I would have assumed the same thing. Now when I see people in those spots, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Like, all right, I'm gonna watch and see how this plays out. So I see Jay-Z no longer like there in that space. I'm like, okay, well maybe he was trying to make a power move, but he just wasn't afforded the real opportunity and he backed out. I wonder if that's the case. I don't know, but I offer up the benefit of the doubt because these things are complicated and you have to have a long-term plan, and it's rough because you work in these spaces and you watching out for white folk to shoot a move on you, and it'll be somebody that's black that'll shoot a move on you. You know what I mean?
I like that we're in this discussion because right now we're talking about what I call the closed door meeting, because I've been in certain spaces where they say, you know, some things got to be a closed door meeting. And you know me, I'm media, so like my bias obviously leans towards like, if it's closed door, what is it that's said in this room that you don't want in my community?
Yeah.
And I've even challenged one of my homies where it's like, I already know as the success builds, the labeling of coon, Uncle Tom, you tap dance for them white folks, not only do I expect it, I think it's healthy just due to the challenges that already exist in our community.
Yeah.
And I'm understanding of it. And you're right. Some of us may not even give the depth of understanding to get there, but just due to the scarcity of access and opportunity, it creates that. Hence, the anger of like, damn, is this the only position we can get in? Why do I got to go through the back door? You know, when am I going to have my Miss Jane Pittman moment? Because it's like, I ain't going through the back door no more. I don't want a closed door meeting. It's like, if you can't meet with me and my community and take on the pressure I'm going to take, then it's tough. And for me, as I unpack more of the value of social capital, because I feel that's what we have as a people, our creativity and our social capital is abundant. I think our creativity feeds our social capital. Sometimes, you know, the white black kid could just gather energy just for walking in a room. You know what I'm saying? Just from natural energy. That's that essence, that creativity, that social capital that does exist. And because it's more abundant with our people, it's devalued in other circles, but it's always honored and it's always used. I mean, when we look at what advertisement is, or right now, you know, hip hop's 50 years old. When we think of the way hip hop in our age, I mean, I'm guessing
hip hop has made a lot of people money.
Man. I mean, but the people that's not making money are the people that actually are, as you say, it's the nigga on the court. When I look at some of the OGs and what exists, I would never think that, like, I mean, you know, you turn on like even Downy commercials, you know what I'm saying? It's like OPP is in the background and stuff like that. And I'm like, I know Tretch probably doesn't have the publishing associated with this anymore because I'm looking at Tretch, you know what I'm saying? And this is sad and unfortunate of the machine and how things function. But the value is honored. We're just not galvanizing it.
Yeah. I think, but toward what Deron was saying earlier, I think we are very quick to try to put black folks in those positions if they're not moving how we think they should move in a fast enough way.
Very much
right? Before you, like you're saying, before we even give them time to move. Yeah. Like, why ain't you making change right now?
Right.
Where that person's behind the scenes like, I'm making change.
Yeah.
I'm fighting.
Yep.
I'm every day. You know what I mean? I mean, it's the same thing when I went to work for an organization, and when I first looked on their webpage, it was all white folks. The first thing I thought, my mind was like, I'm not going to work for them because they're looking for a token. That was the first thing that I said in my mind. And then the next thing I said was, but if not me, then who? Somebody has to get in this position to make sure that it ain't just all white folks, right? So then, like you said, my agenda was to come in and say, okay, now when I come here, I'm going to hire black folks. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And so when I joined the organization, then I started making moves towards the favor of black folks. And I always say that, too, because I had that discussion with my brothers. Like, oh, man, they hiring you to be a token. I said, I said, that might be so. But what they're going to find out very soon is that is what I am not. So you can hire me to be one.
That's it.
But you're going to find out that I am not.
Right.
And then we're going to have to make a decision if we part ways or not. Yeah. And that's what ended up happening, right? But someone has to get in there to make those moves, or those moves won't be made.
Exactly. And it's like, we have, in my opinion, and in my experience, what I know to be true is we have real allies out there in some of these spaces. And they're looking to right some wrongs. But they need guidance, right? So like, they're not good. They got to make it up and wing it, unless somebody comes in and says, I'll take a chance and be here in this space, right? I will be the first, right? Like your grandfather was the first to move on Clements, you know what I'm saying? With more, made room and space for more to follow. What they learned was, this is a dude that went and served in the military, you know what I mean? This is a stand-up family man, you know what I mean? And some people still didn't want to live around him, so they bust up and they moved out. You know what I mean? And that's okay. But when I think the important thing is when we go into these spaces is to keep the mindset that you said. I'm going to be the real Dewan. I'm going to be the real Ken. I'm going to be the real Khary when I go into this space, so that they know they're not dealing with a representative. And I like to sleep well at night, right? So like as you know, a brother called me like names that, you know, would trouble you, I know that wasn't the case for me. You know what I mean? And now, me and the same folks that said that, especially the brother that said the Oreo piece, me and him are tight. You know what I mean? Because he watched me, right? And it's like, I think that we're signing up for that. When we step in those spaces.
Yes, definitely.
Like, welcome accountability, right? Yeah. Because I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people watching me. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, but more than people watching, that agitation, that fight, that vigor, and this may be more so my lens from the activism in my family and everything, and understand the bigger story, because that fight does matter too. And when I say that fight matters, meaning that as you challenge me to be more accountable for my community, and you throw those stones at me, or throw those stones at Dewan or Ken, as committed as we're an act, that definitely, in my mind, that helps us. When Martin Luther King and Malcolm X met for the first time, Martin Luther King pulled Malcolm to the side and said, yeah, man, keep doing what you're doing, because you're actually helping me. Like, this sometimes becomes the relationship. You know, when you have a Marcus Garvey, W.B. Du Bois, and a Booker T. Washington, all around kind of the same time, moving around Harlem, it definitely disorients things, because you have different variations of thought. And it's like, all right, look, if we don't support Booker T or W.B. Du Bois, and we see the growth of this UNIA organization, you're going to get more people over here. So let's at least do something over there. And then the responsibility comes for Booker T. And Booker T and Marcus Garvey had a strong relationship that I don't think a lot of people know about. It was more of that was one of those closed door meetings that probably needed to happen, where brothers had the closed door meeting. It's like, I know you're going to grill me, and I need to be grilled, but I'm going to support what you're doing too, because it's going to get more resources. If we can use this in strategy, it's going to challenge. But if we stay apathetic, if we just sit back and we say, you know, one of those things where it's like, wow, you know, not to look at his presidency or in any way, and I definitely think it was more that could have been done. But if things happen where it's like, wow, we got a black president, so we can get back, everything's cool. No, that's when we ramp up even more. Because it's like, if these people are mad with the black president, then we have to be even more accountable if I want to be the first white president or the next white president to come after this black president. Like, I do believe that agitation, that fight, that anger, because it does exist in our community, is real. And you're right, it takes thick skin for us. If things do move beyond sticks, and if things move beyond words into sticks and stones, things will get handled with sticks and stones. But if they stay at words, please keep that agitation up.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And I would say, I think we got to get ready to wrap up, right? Okay. And we'll invite you to come back. So I'm loving this conversation. When we're working in the space and somebody else comes along from our community working in the space and they're doing something a little bit different from us, that's okay, right? It's like no one has the whole answer. We're all a part of it, right? And I think we fit together well when we realize that we're a part of the solution, as long as we're working for the common good, and our allies have a part to play, right? And I think that we all work together well. I think that, because I'm doing things or I move a certain way and I see somebody doing something different, publicly scrutinizing and condemning and damning that way is one of the things that ends up like hurting us and taking it a lot longer. And it also hurts. You work in that space. Sometimes those words can be just as painful as stick and stone sometimes, But Ken, Khary, I open it up to y'all to wrap up any thoughts, and then we'll bring it to a close and save the rest for next time. I got to save them something.
I'll go with Khary. Actually, I defer.
Okay.
Because I know you got a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
probably
just
10 minutes worth.
I'm gonna butt it up quick this time. But definitely always a lot. I'm always talking and thinking, and always, like I say, on the flip side of it.
Yes,
even during my own interviews, I'm speaking. But from my lens and my bias, I like the agitation. I would say, it can be hurtful. You have to be mindful, especially like if it's a younger person or possibly an older person. But sometimes the dissension in the arc of America, because the words can be violent too, in America historically responds to violence most. So at times we have to be poignant and intentional about how we can use all energies in our community and some of that anger, some of that pain, to plant some seeds and grow some fruit.
It's good. Ken?
I'm good.
Good. Well, y'all heard from both of these gentlemen today on a number of topics, but I think that is because Detroit is different.
Hey, you got that right.
So until next time, this was Dewan, Speak for Yourself, signing off. Look forward to seeing y'all again. Peace.